Audio is half a video, and to get good audio you need a solid recorder. So does the Tascam DR-60D Mark II stand out as a solid recorder? And how does it compare to its primary competition, the Zoom H4n Pro? Well, let's dive in and find out. To start out with, let's run down the design. The recorder is a very solidly built box. All the buttons and dials are very satisfying and clicky. The body is mostly plastic, but it is a very durable plastic, and the important parts like XLR locks and tripod connections are metal. Speaking of tripod connections, the DR-60D has two of those, a female connection on the bottom and a male on the top, both 1/4-20. This is so that you can mount the recorder beneath your camera on top of a tripod or rig. A couple nice touches include the top connection having a dial, so you don't have to spin the whole camera to screw it on, as well as 4 bolts that allow you to entirely remove the top connection if you want to. On the back we have the door to the battery compartment, which takes 4 AA batteries. I'll talk more about the batteries later on. On the left side of the recorder we have 2 microphone inputs, which serve double duty as XLR and 1/4-inch connections. We also have a stereo 3.5mm input that brings our total number of inputs to 4 channels. In addition, there is a camera input for monitoring sound from the camera, a camera out for sending a stereo signal to be recorded directly into the camera as crouch audio, and a connection for a remote. Opposite that side we have our power button, a switch for locking settings while in use, and a bay that opens up to reveal our SD card slot and USB connection. The cover has a split, so it can close over the SD card even with a cable connected to the USB output. We also have a headphones connection and another line out, which brings us to a total of 3 3.5mm output, each with discrete volume controls. Moving up to the front, we get to the fun stuff. First, on each side we have these red bars that protect the screen and controls, as well as serve as excellent points for mounting a strap. More on that in a bit. Right up front we have the LCD screen, which shows levels and menus. The LCD has a backlight as well as very high contrast, which makes it easy to see in anything from pitch black to direct sunlight. Below that are our 3 dials which control input levels, channels 3 and 4 are controlled together, as well as 2 switches to enable line or 48-volt phantom power on the XLR inputs. Each input also has a red LED that flashes if any of the inputs are peaking. Over to the right of that we have a dial/button, which is what controls the menu. We also have essentially all of the buttons you would expect on a recorder, as well as a few more. In addition, there's also 3 LEDs. The first 2 indicate what mode the recorder is in, and the last is a tally light that shows when you are recording. Okay, so now that we've got the design down, let's dive into actual features and usability. Overall, I like this recorder a lot. It has essentially all the features and functionality I could ask for. The preamps on the recorder are very high quality. In fact, I even recorded a music album using this recorder, which I'll put a card for if you want to listen to. Even with 2 large diaphragm condenser mics connected, specifically the Rode NT1A, I didn't notice any issues. I've also recorded with the SM57, Rode NTG1, which is what you're hearing now, and even a direct box for an electric guitar, and all sounded just fine. Now that we've got one positive out of the way, let's talk about a negative: battery life. This device requires 4 AA batteries and it chews through them very quickly, especially if you're using phantom power. Fortunately, you can power it over USB, which allows you to plug into the wall or a battery bank, but it seems like not including a built-in rechargeable lithium-ion battery was an oversight. If we're comparing to the H4n Pro here, the H4n wins in battery life, but it still lacks an internal rechargeable battery. While we're on the subject of USB, the DR-60D allows you to connect directly to a computer to transfer files. That's nice, but one really big feature it seems like is missing is the ability to use the recorder as a USB audio interface. This is something both the H4n and the H2n can do, and there are plenty of times where it would be very useful. With that album I mentioned earlier, having the recorder work as an interface would have allowed me to record directly into Pro Tools on my laptop, rather than having to sync up all the parts after recording. So now let's dive into software features the DR-60D has. The recorder supports 5 different recording modes: mono, stereo, dual mono, dual stereo, and 4-channel, all depending on how many channels you want and how many files you want those channels divided into. The dual mono mode also allows you to record two versions of the same input, but one at a lower gain in case you accidentally clip on the primary track. Each input mode lets you select any of the inputs. Speaking of input settings, we also have dedicated settings for each input, with the exception of 3 and 4, which are grouped together. This allows you to set the gain, limiter, low cut, and delay for each of those input groups. The gain setting gives us 4 options for gain as well as a muted mode. There's only one limiter setting, which is a bit of a disappointment, but we do have the option to limit each channel individually or link channels 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 together. The low cut can be selectively set to off, 40 Hz, 80 Hz, or 120 Hz. We also have a delay option in case one of your inputs has more latency. You can selectively set up to 150 milliseconds of delay compensation in either direction, with the first channel serving as a reference. On to recording settings, the recorder has options for either BWF or WAV files at 16-bit or 24-bit depth. The sample rate can also be set to 44.1, 48, or 96K. Unfortunately, the recorder doesn't support MP3 recording, which could be annoying for people who need to be able to use storage space as efficiently as possible for long recordings. This is another note where the H4n is ahead. Beyond that, there's a lot of miscellaneous options like setting maximum file size, pre-recording or recording delay options, as well as options for the built-in tone slate. You also have options for automatically starting recording if the audio input passes a certain threshold. So overall now, I think the conclusion is, how does the DR-60D actually fare against its primary competition, the H4n? After all, pretty much every point of comparison so far has favored the H4n. Well, there's a reason I took a chance and bought the DR-60D, even though I already had experience using the H4n. Quite simply, it comes down to the fact that the DR-60D is designed for filmmakers and the H4n is designed for musicians. Sure, you can use either one for either task, but you only have to look at the features and form factor to understand their focus. The H4n has the ability to be used as an audio interface, it has an onboard metronome and tuner, it ships with Cubase and Wavelab DAW software, and there's even onboard effects like amp models, reverb and delay, and compression. Not to mention that Zoom just announced a new Zoom H4n product targeted to videographers at that same price point. On the other hand, the Tascam has features like a tone slate, a camera output for scratch audio, and multiple outputs for monitoring. The form factor also makes it incredibly easy to hook up to a camera or rig, or throw on a strap and carry it. Both are excellent tools with a huge amount of overlap in terms of features and design, and neither is a bad choice. But if you're looking for a recorder for shooting video, I think the DR-60D is the way to go, at least until the Zoom H4n comes out. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you liked this video, if it was helpful, if you learned more about the Tascam DR-60D, whether to buy it, or some of the features even if you already have one, hit that like button. If not, feel free to hit the dislike button. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those down in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit that subscribe button.